and death are the same. Both can have value and purpose.
Hear me, my son. I alone will tell you the truth. Death is the only punishment here.
Death is in our air, in sea, in earth. It can come for us at any moment. To show your true heart is to risk your life. Enemies are everywhere and friends nowhere. Life and death are the same. Both can have value and purpose. Remember, we live and we die. We control nothing beyond that.
This is not where we die. We should be corpses. But here we are.
And we are live. What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to another Shogun after show and live discussion for episode 6, Ladies of the Willow World. And this was another great episode, I thought. I mean, I know we say it every week, but each episode just continues to up the ante. The quality of the production has been absolutely phenomenal. And I really enjoyed this one. I mean, it was a little bit slower plot-wise, but we got a good amount of character development. We learned a little bit, well, more than a little bit, about some of our main characters and their histories. Learned a little bit more about Ochiba and Mariko's past and how they were once very close friends. Learned a little bit more about Mariko's father and the crimes that he committed when she was a child that led to him and the entire family to being killed. And it was pretty good. And of course, Blackthorn got a brand new promotion, and it looks like Crimson Sky is on the horizon. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, Ravener, Scarlet, Dana. How's it going, everybody? How did you guys like this episode?
I'll tell you what, it took a few watches for me because it was a little slower, but my goodness, if and again, this one, I've said it, pretty much every show, because it's all subtitled. I know there is the dub version, but it's not one that you can just wander around and do chores and stuff while it's in the background and then perk up from time to time or mess around on your phone. But if you're sitting there, if you really square off the time, the 58 minutes or whatever it is of your day, and settle in with the right mindset and just soak in that world and the relationships and the writing and the nonverbal cues and stuff. My God, what a rich, wonderful experience this show is. I'm loving it more and more every time. And I'm fairly critical. I'm fairly nitpicky. We'll find something. But man, it's just holding up. This one is holding up for me. I'm enjoying it. And this one was more talky, a lot more relationships. But I loved how they interplayed the flashbacks. I loved how, and my God, the lady Anna, what her name is, that plays Mariko. My God, so good in this one. By not some of her unspoken, some of her gestures, some of her facial, just man. Amazing.
Yeah, these characters emote incredibly well. I know it's something that we've all kind of, noticed in the past, but these characters are capable of speaking so much by saying absolutely nothing, just with simple facial expressions and gestures. And I feel like the female characters in particular are maybe even, shining a little bit more in that area. Characters like Mariko and Fuji, for example. Mm-hmm. But this was a great episode. But what about you, Scarlett? Is there one thing that sticks out above the rest when you think of episode 6?
Oh man, I mean, pretty much just piggybacking off of what Ravener said. I mean, I agree completely what he's saying, and with that, even the what is her name, Kiri, the
The courtesan, yeah, Kitty.
Yeah,
Oh,
her
Kiku.
facial expressions
Kiku.
when yeah, her expressions when they're doing that whole scene with Blackthorn and Mariko,
Oh
and
yeah,
how she's talking to Mariko, even like she knows she's there. Like it's almost like this understanding of a situation, and we understand what's going on here. How do you
yeah,
want to play this? What are we doing? Kind of, and it was just this kind of communication between the two of them that was almost unspoken. And then how she's kind of, and then Mariko and how she's talking to Blackthorn and kind of explaining to him like you don't have a choice in this.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
you're gonna have to
Now,
accept it, and you need to be very, happy about it.
now I don't know if it was just me, but I mean during that scene in particular, and yes, you're 100% on the money. I thought the exact same thing, especially with Kiku's performance in particular. I mean, just the way that she was kind of handling that situation. I mean, I imagine she could probably instantly notice the tension in the room between Mariko and Blackthorn. But it
Mhm.
almost seemed like she knew a little bit more than that. It almost seemed like she
Yeah.
knew Blackthorn and Mariko were kind of intimate,
Yeah.
maybe.
Because when
Yeah.
she walked behind and sat down behind and knew that Mariko had to translate the words,
Yeah.
Mhm.
it was
That
as
was
if
it.
she was speaking for Mariko, but then having Mariko. It was, I don't know, it was beautiful, like little
It
scene.
was good.
It
That
was
It
was
was
good.
good.
exactly it. Coming the going behind part was exactly it. Because at that point she knew, and you could tell Mariko was about to
Hmm.
fall out of her kimono, having to say all the words
Oh,
with,
yeah.
Kiku was behind her. But
And Blackthorn, he was almost in tears because it was, like I said, just the three of them, that whole kind of play. And like I said, the words were there, but there was more body language than there almost was dialogue.
Yeah. I mean, I'm continually impressed every week with just how, like, I mean, I know there's a saying that a picture is worth 1,000 words, but a good facial expression is worth 10,000 words sometimes. And we're really seeing that on display in Shogun, I feel. But what about you, Dana? Is there one moment that sticks out among the rest in episode 6?
When Mariko is negotiating like about with the lady who runs the tea, whatever it is, the tea
Ah,
shop,
yeah, the
oh
Madden
Yeah,
there.
and
yeah,
that was
Yep.
good.
Fuji is sipping her tea, and the lady's like, Mariko, I heard that you're never without him, and always just a little lift of Fuji's like eyebrows when like they're talking. Like
Yeah.
that was my favorite moment because that whole facial expression was like, oh, if she like she knows what's going on, but she's like looking at Mariko like, okay, are you gonna join? Are you gonna join? Just that simple raise of the eyebrow was it said so much in that small moment, and I don't know why, but that stuck with me for the episode.
Oh, nice, nice.
Yeah.
And it's always funny to see those kind of those little moments that end up sticking with us. Obviously there's some big stuff that happened in this episode, but sometimes it's the smaller things that you end up remembering longer.
She said so much without saying anything, just with that simple eye movement.
Yeah,
Like you knew what she was thinking in that moment.
yeah. It's good. I mean, the tension between, not so much tension, but the vibe between Blackthorn, Mariko, and Fuji in particular. I love the dynamic between those three characters. We're getting some really interesting moments between the three of them, and it's almost like they're kind of already come to this kind of mutual, unspoken understanding between the three. Fuji definitely knows what's going on. I mean, she's not blind. She clearly sees that something's going on between Mariko and Blackthorn, and it's almost like it's just this kind of unspoken thing between the three of them that they all just deal with.
I like how Kiku kind of gave that also sort of look towards Ami when they were leaving. Like they were done with the
Yeah.
night, and then like she told him, he means nothing to me, but she almost like it. Like I said, the whole situation was so,
He was so soured.
yeah. It's just,
Look at
oh
his poor
man.
face.
And she just kind of felt bad. I was like, she felt bad too. Like I didn't want to have to do this, but you knew what you was getting into.
Yeah,
You knew what
yeah.
my job was.
You know who I am, right? Like, you know what my job is exactly at the end of the day.
And I think that scene before, I mean, when she like basically said that she had to go entertain Blackthorn, and when she's telling Omi that, that was really to keep her hooks in him, to reassure him, hey, he means nothing, blah blah blah. But you're my number one guy, even though she's heading out the door, But it's because she's got her hooks in him, and almost the same way that Blackthorn emphasized when he was with Kiku and Mariko, saying that prostitutes are less talkative or whatever. That was kind of the role for that type of courtesan. I mean, they were confidants and that kind of stuff too. That's why they made such great spies and stuff. And with a modern eye, you're like, oh my gosh, who we've seen enough spy thrillers and we've seen enough of everything where we know, God, if you get caught up in pillow talk by some prostitute, oh, what an idiot. But man, there's a reason it works like that, because it works again and again over time. Guys want to confide, guys want to say what they know. It is.
Guys want to talk about shit as much as girls do. I know guys put on, we're dudes, so, we put on the hard exterior, but everybody's got feelings deep down. And a character like Kiku, a very experienced courtesan like she is, she's just perfectly adept at kind of drawing that out of somebody, I would imagine.
Mm-hmm.
But they are even like just the difference, and I guess theirs to what Blackthorn is used to. Like she was even to the extent that they have to learn how to pour the sake. Like it's not just about the sex, so to speak. It's like the whole experience and the care that's given, I guess, to the gentleman. But it's supposed to be more respectful, because these, I guess, are supposed to be your high end, right? They're not just some chick on the street.
Right. Well, yeah, and thanks to Reddit, thanks to some people a lot more intelligent than I am, I guess. What it is, the Monme or whatever they were, the unit of measure, what was it? They settled for 300 Monme, which I think is going to equate to about 5 kiku. A kiku is a unit of rice that feeds one person for a year, which is supposed to be 150 kilos or 330 pounds. That's equal to 1 ryu, which is a gold coin, and I think 60 monme equals 1 ryu. So a kiku is equal to a ryu, which is equal to 60 monme. So 300 monme is equal to about 5 ryu, which is equal to 5 kiku.
We saw in this episode, he recently came into a whole new fief that's bringing in like 600. Right. I think it was like 600 annually. He said, I believe.
Yeah. Right. And like then he had a salary, right, of like 240 or something prior. Even
before that, as a Hatamoto, he had a generous salary even before then.
Yeah, so they said he's very wealthy, but not like extravagantly so, but certainly super. And then I think whoever it did
enough to make these other people, all these people under Toranaga jealous. That's for sure.
Yeah, and they said like the modern conversion to gold, like because the ryu is a weight of gold, which is certain amount of grams, but it's about $900. So they settled for Kiku for $900 for that night.
Okay.
So
awesome. No, that's great. I did not know that. So that's great. And we always get a good history lesson from Raven.
I try not to put everybody to sleep.
No,
right?
I love it, man. I love it. That's what I love, especially when we're reviewing stuff that is kind of loosely based on actual real history. Because Ravener is he's a history major, so he knows a lot of these ins and outs, and he's a historical weapons freaking expert at this point.
Who do you think I went to from stuff when it came to the Civil War stuff? Like, hey, Ravener, what do you know?
It's what I love, man. I've learned 1,000 times more just in private reading and stuff than I ever did in college. But that's where the passion has to be. That's how you learn your stuff, just like you do with House of the Dragon, Game of Thrones, and stuff. If it was assigned, if that was assigned in a class, you'd learn enough to pass the class and get out of there. But man, if you're doing it with passion. Absolutely.
Exactly. No, 100% Snug. Tell us more, Professor Ravener. That's why we got the Ravener #1 fan club emojis in the chat, guys. I'm glad you're there. But speaking of the awesome chat, I want to know what moments from episode 6 stood out to you guys the most as well. I know we've been discussing about some of the most standout moments, but Yeah, in the chat, let us know. Sound off. What were some of your favorite moments from episode 6? As I scroll up here and see who we have joining us this evening. I see Betrayed King in the house, first in the building. What is up, Betrayed King? Good to see you, my friend. Bow, Toranaga, Shogun. Hell yes, my friend. Hell yes. We got Michael Lockhart in the house as well. What is up, Michael Lockhart? Good to see you, my friend. Another expert, another resident expert on all things Shogun. We got Doc Hayes in the building. What is up, Doc Hayes? Always good to see you, my friend. We got Henry Bemis in the house as well. What is up, Henry Bemis? Welcome, welcome. And welcome to everybody on this fine, fine Wednesday evening. We got Snuggy Jr. in the chat as well. What is up, Snuggy Jr.? Lots of explanations of characters' motivations in this episode. Good episode. Indeed, we finally learned some pretty revealing things in this episode. And in particular, we finally see just how much disdain Lady Ochiba has for Toranaga, and exactly why she hates him so much, and how she kind of blames him for the death of her father, even though he wasn't exactly the one to deliver the killing blow. But yeah, we're going to dive into that. We got Jose Ramirez in the house. What is up, Jose? What is up, party people? Hell yes. What is going on, party people? Love it. We got Kai in the building. What is up, Kai? Good to see you as well, my friend. Welcome back. I hope everybody is ready for another discussion for Shogun. Anyone watch anime? I've only ever hear E.I. Hui chant from cute anime girls pumping the class up for the school festival.
Yeah. That's right.
I don't watch anime myself personally. I've tried to get into a little bit over the years. There are some members of the chat that do like anime. It's not for me for the most part. There's some anime stuff I like. Like I have recently been introduced to the manga Berserk. And I'm really liking that one, but I think I'm drawn to that one a little bit more because it's more of a Western style art style. It's not, I'm not a big fan of the anime style art really, with the, the anime style face and hair and all that. The Dragon Ball Z look. I know it's widely popular, hugely popular, but for me, it's just never been my kind of thing. But Berserk, I recently started to get into. I did watch a little bit of Attack on Titan, the original anime. That wasn't bad. I did kind of enjoy that. But overall, no, I don't know a whole lot about anime. It's not my wheelhouse.
Yeah, I asked a few people. I mean, I said if there was one thing that was really like indicative of the whole genre, if somebody was new to it and you really wanted to impress them, and everybody has like a fantasy version or a whatever version. I was always recommended Lone Wolf and Cub, and then I was also recommended Blade of the Immortal. And it isn't that cartoony, big-eyed, weird stuff that we see, that we associate. But those are mangas more so than animes.
Yeah, I'm terrible. I like Sailor Moon as a girl, but that's because I got to see it as a cartoon on TV in the mornings before I went to school.
Yeah. Well, I know that's a hugely popular one. Sailor Moon. I know Shonen Jump has a ton of widely popular properties. I just, it's just not my kind of thing. I'm much more of a Marvel, DC, American independent comics kind of fan. But
I love Batman more. I mean, I'll take Batman over them all any day of the week. But if I had to say one that I knew of, it'd be Sailor Moon. Oh, so
there you go. You got a little bit of Weeper in you. Scarlett's got a little bit of Weeper in her. There we go.
Oh, yeah, it's there. There's probably others, but what was it? Vampire D. I did like that.
Vampire Hunter D. I have heard of that one. Yeah.
I don't know if that's considered. See, I don't know the rules here of classification because my daughter, she's kind of into it, and she came home with some books, and she's like, these aren't manga. There's something else. Another. I don't even remember the name she called it, but it's, to me, I thought it was the same thing. I don't know.
Yeah. And as Doc says, there's something out there for everyone. I know anime and manga has become widely popular, especially here in the States over the last few years. The American comic book industry has taken a little bit of a nosedive over the last few years in terms of story quality and art quality. So a lot of people have started turning to manga and anime to get, a better form of storytelling. So manga and anime is absolutely blowing up here in the States where, 5 years ago, practically nobody really, it was very niche a few years ago, but it's definitely blowing up now.
There are some good, there's good anime out there if you give it a try. Like I always recommend Death Note. Death Note is my favorite like anime. I love Death Note. I'm a huge Death Note fan. Just like I love Castlevania. And Demon
Castlevania, I did
Slayer.
enjoy.
Demon Slayer is another really, really good one. So there is good anime out there that's not cheese camp filled. Like, so you just got to know it. Once you see a few, you'll figure out what you like. It's because it's so
experiment.
broad. Yeah.
Yeah. Experiment, see what's in your wheelhouse, I guess. Try everything. That's what I say. Never limit yourself. Michael Lockhart says Fuji's facial expressions are gold. Absolutely. Again, I know we praise Fuji's performance every week, but she really does so much with very little. I mean, she doesn't have a whole lot of dialogue. She isn't one of a hugely prominent character. I would definitely consider her more of a secondary character, but her impact on the show and her performance is just as good as anybody else's, for sure. And apparently this was Sanguinista J's favorite episode of the season. Awesome, guys. Favorite episode of the season. I like it. All the ladies acting and telling so much with just their face and their eyes here is just next level. Yeah, it really is. I mean, again, we say it a lot, but it's true. The way that they emote is incredibly impressive. They can say a lot by saying very little. I didn't want to buy all the tea houses in the province, says Michael Lockhart. Yeah, you don't want to do that. You want to do that. We learned that a really good courtesan is half prostitute, half life coach. It's funny, but that is definitely very much the case. Just like my fellow co-hosts were bringing up earlier, and it's not so much the sex that these courtesans are trained in. Obviously, they're very adept at that, I must imagine. But it's like Scarlett was saying, it's the whole experience that you kind of go to these brothels for. You're not just going there for a quick pump and leaving. It's that whole kind of pampered experience that they offer, at least in these more high-end brothels that we see here. Half prostitute, half life coach. That's a good way of putting it. Good way of putting it. The book goes crazy into Kiku's sex dungeon and her toys. Obviously, glad they cut that from the show, but it was great the way they handled the trio in that room and where they were positioned. Yeah, we learned a lot about the positioning of the seating arrangement in particular, especially when it comes to sitting down and having tea and eating dinner. The seating arrangement, what might seem just random and trivial to us, to them has much more of a meaning, where I found out that the most important person seated at the table is always seated with their face to the door, with the least lowest ranking person usually always faced with their back towards the door. So it's little things like that you start to learn about their culture, where even their seating arrangements are incredibly deliberate. Nothing is random. Everything's planned out. And it just speaks to another level of discipline that they have as a culture.
Yeah, even like right there where you see the girl coming in with the tea, and that was like supposed to be the girl she's training. She was even telling her about the spaces and how like placing the pots and stuff like that, and the meaning behind that. So yeah, they definitely show the details, man. I love it.
Yeah, and that's what I really like about this show, where they're not just showing us the same stuff every other kind of feudal Japan samurai kind of movie show. They're not showing us the same old stuff that all those other productions show. They're really kind of diving much deeper into these smaller, finer details, which again, I know the show has really prided themselves on their authenticity. And I got to say, I mean, just from an outsider looking in, I'm by no means an expert on feudal Japan. I've definitely been reading up on it more and more. But just from an outsider looking in, it definitely looks like one of the most accurate, if not the most accurate depictions I've ever seen on screen. They're doing great. They are doing absolutely great.
Absolutely. And training for years to pour. And then, the second round, he's like, another good pour. It's like, this is kind of funny, man. He's still trying to keep up, man. He's still trying to keep up, Blackthorn. And like, I mean, you guys know, I was not, I thought he was a doofus in the first few. But he's trying, man. He's trying to catch up, and he's still, fish out of water. But he's trying to catch it. And I think that might have been. He was a little bit. We know what Toranaga was doing by sending him to the. I mean, the theoretical reason was that he didn't get his way, that he's not going to allow Blackthorn to sail back to England. That was what Blackthorn requested, and Toranaga's denying that. And he said, we'll smooth it over by sending him to to the court.
Yeah, silver lining, we'll send him to a brothel.
But the other side of it is kind of like, and a guy would do that. You're like, and he kind of knew that there was something. There was like, this is like the second episode in a row where Blackthorn and Mariko are a little bit, at each other, and that tension is there. And Toranaga's not a dummy. He can't really concern himself with what's going on, but he knows there's something going on. And so what a guy would do is like, let's send him somewhere, have him clean his pipes, and that might get it, might take the stress off of it. That's what he was thinking,
I mean, and we hear them, pillowing, a healthy pillowing lifestyle is essential to good health. So, I mean, hey, you just got to follow, when in Rome, when in Rome.
Yeah.
Well, I think this episode, he almost basically out and out tells Mariko, like, whatever's going on, like, we can't deal with this right now. We got too much going on. Y'all need to figure this out, work it out. You and your husband and, Blackthorn, y'all need to figure it out. Because he got on to all three of them. Well, not Blackthorn so much, but definitely kind of got on to Mariko and Buntaro. Yeah. Which,
well, now that
what they revealed about her and him was really good in this episode.
Right. And they're trying to make
a really good scene.
Yeah, trying to make Buntaro a little more sympathetic, because he's like,
just a little bit.
She's been iced the whole time, and and he was like, well, why don't you divorce her? And he's like, not after all this time. But she's always been iced to Buntaro, but with him, she's different. Yeah.
Warmed her heart. Yeah.
So what does he do? He bans Buntaro from Mariko for a
7
week.
days.
Yeah.
So now the question for me is it going to be in the house still, or are they going to put him somewhere else? How is that week going to be handled? That is the question for me.
That's what I'm looking forward to find out too. Is he even going to stay away from the 7 days? I mean, if anyone's seen the trailer for episode 7, you might know a little bit of where this thing could potentially be heading. But no, this was such a good scene. We definitely started to see definitely a different side of Buntaro that we hadn't really seen before. A little bit more of the vulnerable side. He always presents himself as the kind of strong samurai warrior, which he is. But again, everybody's human at the end of the day. And you can tell he does genuinely care about Mariko and genuinely loves her. It seems like he genuinely wants a happy marriage, but the way things have played out, with Mariko being incredibly damaged from her past and everything that happened with her father and all of that, as he says, she's always been ice, and he thought she'd be grateful for sparing her life, but really, she's been ice.
I know, but
he would still give his life for her.
He just doesn't seem to do it though, like in a very nice way. Like other than the fact that he spared her life, and that is very good and great. But then, like he says she's so cold, but he comes off very rigid to her. Like over like the first couple episodes when you see how she's with the son, like I know the son, you got to be stern, but he was like almost like just straight up mean about them just kind of sitting there and just having a nice meal, like it was just I don't know. And then like I get it, like he's just super jealous. That whole Saki thing now,
super
jealous. And so instead of going after him, you literally like endanger the woman you love.
That's a good point. Yeah, because it's not like Buntaro can directly kind of take his frustrations out on Blackthorn, who is kind of the object of his ire, or at least the object of his jealousy, the cause of his jealousy. So what's he do? He kind of in turn takes it out on Mariko that much more. So yeah, no, that's a good point. But yeah, he's incredibly damaged. I think they're both incredibly damaged. There's a lot of baggage there that we're starting to learn a little bit more about. But at the end of the day, Snuggie says, nope, it's Blackthorn's an alien. So I think case closed.
He is technically.
Case closed. He is an alien, technically. And Michael Lockhart points out, by the way, I'm taking bets on whether we see the tea ceremony in episode 7 or 8. I thought for sure it would be within the next 2 episodes. So if I'm going to bet, I would say episode 7. The next week's episode, I have a feeling that's probably when it's going to happen. But if it doesn't, I imagine it can't be any later than 8. There's a very interesting scene that is coming up. I won't spoil it, but there's a very interesting scene coming up with Buntaro and a tea party ceremony. And yeah, I can't wait for people to see that. I can't wait to see that scene. I mean, it was spoiled for me, unfortunately, but yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing that. I hope we get that scene in episode 7. We're right around that time period in the book where it happens, I believe. So yeah, big scenes coming up, guys, with Buntaro. Toranaga is like, no time for love triangle. There's a war at his doorstep. Indeed, and that is kind of his mindset at the end of the day. As much as he would love to, in a time of peace, I imagine he would have handled this whole Blackthorn, Mariko, Buntaro situation much differently. Had he, were he able to give it his undivided attention. But yeah, like you said, they're on the brink of war right now. This is things are only getting closer and closer to war every day. So Toranaga doesn't really have time to settle domestic disputes, as it were.
And especially because Buntaro is like his sworn man, his samurai, versus because like the other thing, like the thing with the pheasant, it went to the town, the village took it to the town, the head guy, and the head guy said this is a household matter, and it was for Blackthorn to handle within his own household. But yeah, he couldn't do anything to Buntaro because Buntaro is Toranaga's man, and you'll see this. We actually see something. That really does reinforce the strata later when right at the beginning, actually, when they give the cannon to Blackthorn that they had just given to, was it Omi? Earlier?
Yeah, they had just given it to Omi. Yep.
And that was they started off with such a cool scene because Omi was complaining that he got his cannon regiment that he just got taken away from him. And then Yabashige is like, look, our army is in ruins here. So it was kind of funny. And I always said that the young guys, just like Nagakado, Toranaga's son, they're treated like idiots or whatever, but it's not so much that they're idiots. It's just that they're impulsive and they're short-sighted. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. And they just aren't seeing the full picture. And I think, Yabashige knew, it was going to be a close run thing if they had a full army. And then after losing a bunch of people in the earthquake, it's like, man, this is just like you said, time to write another will.
And I love this, man. Like, this has been such a fun theme throughout the season. And we've seen him mention it like, two or three different times now where this theme keeps popping up where he's like, okay, it might be time to write another will as he just keeps feeling the walls close in on him. So I hope we get another scene in one of these next episodes where he rips this one up too, because these scenes have been freaking hilarious. But yeah, no, you're 100% right. It's we see a little bit of the difference in the short-sightedness and characters like Omi and Toranaga's son definitely thinking a little bit more of the short term, where Toranaga and Mariko and some of these characters that are thinking a little bit more long-term gain and looking at the overall scope of it. But again, I think that just comes with the experience versus the inexperience of youth and having been at warfare. Now, this is something I want to talk a little bit about as well, because I definitely started to notice this. We've been noticing this theme pretty much throughout the entire season, but it's definitely starting to get, just for me personally as a viewer, it started to get a little bit annoying in this episode in particular. Mariko completely mistranslating Blackthorn, who was clearly animated and contemplating Kiku on how she is different from London prostitutes. And again, this is a theme that we have been seeing all throughout the season, and we see it very prominent in this episode, where Mariko very rarely translates accurately what Blackthorn is saying. And in this scene here in particular, she totally starts to show her biases towards the Catholic Church. Obviously, Mariko is Catholic. She was, taught a lot by the Catholic Church. So when Blackthorn comes around and starts throwing all these accusations at the Portuguese and the Catholic Church, of course, Mariko doesn't want to believe it at first. But this has been, it started to get a little bit annoying last night in this episode, where she was intentionally not conveying what Blackthorn was trying to say to Toranaga, and most likely due to her own biases. And just for me as a viewer, it started to get a little bit annoying seeing her mistranslate him all the time. What about you guys with the whole mistranslation thing? Is that just me? Am I just looking into it too much, or is that something anyone else has noticed?
Well, there is one. Yeah. Let me jump in right Right. It was when Kiko was saying goodbye, when Blackthorn was done with her and they were saying goodbye, and she says so, to visit again. Mariko didn't translate the visit at me again. I look forward to your next visit or something. Yeah.
Yep.
Didn't translate that. She just said he's grateful or something.
I think even Blackthorn calls her out a little bit though during this scene because he's realizing she's not translating properly. Like I think he knows it, and I don't know how far if Tokunaga really knows it or not because he doesn't seem to pick up on it completely until that moment. But yeah, she's intentionally for her own purposes. But I would assume so. I mean, to me, it's not so much frustrating as much as I see why she's doing it in her character. She's not. She's kind of been that way with Blackthorn the whole time. She doesn't give him the upper hand.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's very true. Her having that upper hand, with Blackthorn having to rely on her. So that's a good point.
But Blackthorn also twisted the knife a little bit because when I think when Toranaga kind of called her out on it or whatever, and Blackthorn says, as a translator and nothing more. And you could just, I mean, again, this is one of those where you didn't see any facial gestures or anything, but you could see the eightfold fence go.
Go right up. Yeah.
I mean, by trying so hard not to react, she kind of reacted to that jab, translator and nothing more.
Yeah,
I think Blackthorn's known. I think he's known the whole time she's not properly translated. That's why he's so frustrated.
He's probably suspicious. Yeah, he has to be. I imagine at this point. And even Toranaga, has that. Says that one line to Mariko here in this scene where Mariko says to Blackthorn, "I am reminded that I am to act as your translator and nothing more," because it seemed like even Toranaga was starting to realize that there's a problem there. There's something going on. And even in the previous episode, he remarks on there's a dark shadow over both of you. So I think Toranaga clearly knows what's going on, and I think part of Toranaga ordering Mariko to accompany Blackthorn to the brothel, I think that in some small ways was another little subtle jab, because obviously I think Toranaga knows there is something. He knows there's something going on between Mariko and Blackthorn. So I think that was almost his way of let me make Mariko go along for this. Experience, as it was almost like a little subtle jab, a little shade, kind of
make her witness.
He was gonna be like, in case he says anything,
right? In case he talks while he pillows.
In case he likes to talk while he pillows, yeah.
Like in the room, you got to be right next to him,
right?
Like, but really, dude.
But sit there while your boyfriend is getting busy, and and hopefully, for Toranaga, he figured she would kind of get if not jealous, she would get mad or whatever, be disgusted by not by having to be there as a witness while she didn't get what she wanted, and he he is getting Kiku or whatever.
Yeah, and as Kyle point. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I also took it as everybody's starting to get suspicious of what's going on between them. So I also think that Toranaga did it to be like, see, if something was going on, would these two just go there and be all like? I also think he did it as a way to take some of the suspicion away from there being anything going on with them.
Ah, okay, could be.
And I guess
as the chat so eloquently puts it. Where is it? I saw it a second ago. As the chat eloquently puts it. It was I can't find it now. Reverse cuck, as Richland Thorne said. Yeah, it was a reverse cuck. That's essentially a reverse cuck, kind of. Yeah.
right. And we saw when he was leaving the Willow house, the whole village was out there. They wanted to see him and the chick that they paid $900 for, 5 koku for, and wanted to see how that was going. And that was probably smart by Toranaga also to have Mariko there, because he probably was aware that such a thing would happen in the village. Had to be aware of just the lay of the land, how people do, and it would certainly get back to Buntaro at some point. If everybody in the village knows, somebody's going to say something at some point. So yeah, that's a very good idea, Dana. That it is kind of like to allay suspicion, kind of.
Yeah. Hopefully ease some of that tension. I mean, Toranaga clearly sees the jealousy building within Buntaro. So if he can, in any small way, deflect suspicion away from Mariko and Blackthorn being an item, that's a positive for Toranaga. So yeah, that is a very good point, Dana.
Right. And
Very
Richland
good
Ford
observation.
Richland Ford in the chat says even the brothel lady was like, "We never see you two apart." And the thing is, she didn't
Yes.
have to say that. She said that because
No.
she wanted to say that.
Yeah, I mean, you don't say a line like that. That's not a throwaway line. You say a line like that because you're implying that you two are always together, that maybe there's a little something more there between the two. You guys are never apart. So, shade being thrown around left and right in this episode, and I cannot get enough of it. Kai points out that, there's a difference between translating and interpreting, but a complete mistranslation and not even interpreting is a completely different thing. Absolutely. And I think we've seen a little bit of the difference between the two, where sometimes Mariko will interpret, and yes, she's not giving an exact word for word translation of what Blackthorn is saying, but she's also not misleading anything that he's saying in some scenes as well. This scene, it was a little bit different. It seemed like she was intentionally not conveying everything that she should have, both in this scene and, as you guys point out as well, with the scene with her and the courtesan as well, Kiku. So yeah, there's a little bit of a difference between, interpreting, taking liberties with your interpretation, and flat out just being a little shady. I think she was being a little shady in this episode.
But she did. She was. I mean, but to your point, to your original point, I think she definitely was defending the Portuguese because. She had such a long history with them, and that's how she learned to speak Portuguese, which I keep having to remind myself that Portuguese is the common language between Blackthorn and her, not English. So when she's speaking English,
we as the audience hear English, but every time they're speaking, they're really speaking in Portuguese.
Right. So there's a lot of different language barriers there too.
Yeah.
Because her Portuguese is pretty good, but is it supposed to be perfect, or is it supposed to be still learning?
I don't think it's supposed to be perfect. We do see in episode 2 when Toranaga already has his own interpreter with Father Martin, but he also brings Mariko in as well, and the excuse was, I want Mariko to practice her Portuguese. So I get the sense that she's fluent, but just not a master with it yet.
Yeah.
So I wonder how much that plays into it. Maybe I'm overthinking that.
Yeah. Well, she said that she'd been learning it for 14 years at some point, like one throwaway line that she'd been learning it for 14 years, but how intensely we don't know.
How diligently has she been practicing every day?
Yeah. And there's, I mean, in this example, and especially, having learned, doing language learning and stuff, almost like Blackthorn's almost got a better advantage because he's immersed in it. He's going to be hearing it nonstop all the time. He'll be learning his Japanese faster than somebody would just being given Portuguese out of a book. And again, that's only what the priest decided to teach her or talk to her about. It was early on when she was talking about gun running to Macau. And I was like, would somebody who's even an intermediate learner know the word for gun running? Is that's kind of in a modern term almost, but maybe not. Maybe that such a thing existed. They wouldn't call it trafficking, but they'd call it something. They'd have to have a term for transport of weapons from one place to the next. So it was neat, man.
Absolutely. I didn't even think of it. Yeah, that's a very good point. Gun running. Gun running just isn't a word you would expect to hear in feudal Japan. Hey, we got to stop gun runners. And as Michael Lockhart points out, one of the biggest deviations from the book to the show up until this point is at this point, Blackthorn does speak a fair amount of Japanese. And again, I think I know a lot of book readers were a little bit upset that they left that scene between Blackthorn and Yabushigi out, which would have probably taken place around the episode 4-ish time, where Yabushigi gives an ultimatum to Blackthorn where he tells him, you have 6 months to learn Japanese or you and everybody else in the village is going to die. So maybe them cutting that scene out could have added a little bit more emphasis had they put it in, but I know a lot of book readers were a little upset we didn't get that scene, and how Blackthorn isn't speaking anywhere near as much Japanese as he is in the book up at this point.
Yeah, and I believe he goes as far as to almost commit seppuku.
Yeah.
And then somebody stops him because they see in that moment that he is willing to lay down his life to save everybody else. So there's a lot more emphasis on that from the book, from what I've heard up until this point.
And leave it, and I mean, especially the seppuku attempt in particular, that would have. I mean, I know we've been seeing Blackthorn really starting to realize that he's really out of his depth here in this place, and he really doesn't quite understand these customs, and it's a very foreign and strange world. That would have been a very good scene that could have conveyed not only to the audience but to Blackthorn as well the severity of the customs and the laws here. I know we get a similar treatment with the gardener and the bird. He kind of gets that similar lesson later on, but it would have been nice to have that added context there if they would have thrown that into the show. So I totally understand book readers being a little upset that the show omitted that. It's an interesting scene.
For the number of people that are trying to kill themselves, the one person who didn't was Buntaro. He was like, I was waiting for him to say, because Toranaga was, really grinding it into him, like, you're a disappointment, you've disappointed your family, blah, blah, blah. I was waiting for him to say it. Man, every other person's doing Sudoku, at the drop of a hat, but Buntaro's just, nah, I'm good.
Right? The guy in the first episode gets up like, I'm gonna kill myself, my line, and everything else, and he just
my newborn baby
interruption, and like, there's Buntaro, like, yeah, my bad.
Well, Buntaro took out like a whole village. He's seeing it like, all right, dude, you did wrong, but I do need you to take out like half this village when we go do this Crimson Sky. I need you to go covert. However you got out, we need you to get back in.
Get back in, yeah. And yeah, Henry Bemis points out that Toranaga is usually the smartest man in the room. He's always 2 steps ahead of everyone, except for earthquakes. This is a good point. And this lady is pro Mariko. Mariko can't compare. In the 1980 series, the lady was following him the morning after. Toranaga is the most dangerous character because he's so hard to read. He seems honorable to his people, but he's really cold and calculated. Absolutely. I mean, the exterior of Toranaga, he definitely presents himself as he is this honorable ruler, which he is for the most part. He's very honorable, but he's definitely not afraid to get his hands dirty and to switch sides even if he has to. I mean, the character that Toranaga is based on, Tokugawa, the real Tokugawa anyway, notoriously changed sides more than once in his real lifetime. So yeah, as honorable as Toranaga is, don't let that fool you. He's definitely capable of getting his hands dirty for sure, and being calculated.
Because could that lead us into Oshiba? Because I would love to talk about Oshiba in this episode. Oh,
let's talk a little bit about Oshiba.
Well, she gave me that Cersei vibe, and I'm getting more and more of it, especially a little bit after hearing her backstory. Kind of understand why she's doing what she's doing.
Yeah, she's been through it. She's definitely been through it.
We'll see this, and as tough and as hard as Toranaga is, he also realizes when he doesn't have the answers, because he had his little council around him, and the guy brought up Crimson Sky, and he's like, "No, we can't do Crimson Sky." But he's like, come back to me when you have an answer, kind of thing.
Yeah.
He knows when he doesn't know, and that's a good thing to know.
It is.
I'm sorry. I'll let you guys go with Ochiba.
No, absolutely not. You're fine. Ochiba, again, like she's been this very kind of mysterious and interesting character throughout this whole series up until this point. We haven't really seen a whole lot of her. We know that she kind of wields this great power, and we know she's kind of in the background. But here we finally get the real Lady Ochiba makes an appearance, and we see right off the bat, like with her being in Osaka for a very small amount of time, we're already seeing the influence that her power is having over Ashido and the rest of the council. She's pretty much at this point running roughshod over the whole council. And I mean, she did say as much at the end of the last episode where she said the council is going to answer to me now. But I thought this was pretty interesting how we got these nice flashbacks to flesh out Ochiba's character a little bit more, learn a little bit more about her past, and of course the friendship that her and Mariko once had, and not just like a regular friendship. They seem to be like very close friends at one point, super close. So that was very interesting. But what did you guys make of Lady Ochiba overall? Now that she has officially entered the fray, now that her and Ashido are seemingly having the council on lock, if one of the final scenes of the episode is any indication, Lady Ochiba is also not afraid to get her hands dirty.
No, I mean, when they kind of show what happens to her, like, all right, Mariko gets married off, and now we understand why Mariko got married off.
Yeah.
But in that scene, it's basically Mariko and her were best friends, maybe even closer. Dana picked up on a little bit of that more than I did. We talked about that earlier, but
yeah, best friends, or maybe even a little more than that. I did see some people mentioning that in my comment section as well. Like, oh, maybe Ochiba and Mariko were a little more than friends. Which
Dana
I
definitely, good call, Dana. Because I didn't pick. I just picked up they were just really close friends, especially in a time when having friends, you probably don't have many, and both of them and the kind of families that they were in at that time, like the kind of fights that were being revealed, and even the monks that were getting, killed off. So you had the one father that was almost like a super tyrant going crazy. And then, you have the other one that's just trying to keep his daughter safe and send her away. And it breaks that friendship. And you see both of them basically in tears. Mm-hmm. And then she basically, Oshiba's father's killed, right? So she's basically about to get sent off to be the consort of a man that, the whole story behind that was tragic. That was just tragic in general.
Yeah.
And what she has to go through just to have an heir for him. And they play it in that play as if it's just this beautiful romantic thing, but really the way she actually remembers it and tells it, it wasn't.
No, it looked like she went through some pretty brutal rituals and stuff just in order to be able to conceive for the Taiko. And yeah, we see a little bit of it. We see a little bit of, they're grinding up herbs, they're giving her teas, they're giving her all these kind of tinctures and stuff that are having Lord knows what kind of adverse side effects on her, all in an attempt that she can maybe give the Taiko an heir, which she eventually does. But she's had a hard road. I mean, she has not had it easy by any means. Not only, when she's, a child, loses her best friend in Mariko, and when Mariko does get married off to Buntaro, I do believe that was the last time Mariko and Ochiba have ever even seen each other. I don't think they've even had any contact since Mariko left to go marry Buntaro. So from that point, she loses her best friend, and now she's kind of alone in this world. Yes, she's got a pretty high-ranking place, being the highest-ranking courtesan of the Taiko, but still, I mean, she's still kind of very much alone in this place. And she's being forced to provide an heir. And I mean, you can see, it totally gave me, I don't know if anyone watches House of the Dragon in the chat, but this totally gave me Alicent and King Viserys vibes between Ochiba, right? Like, holy shit.
They was talking about this earlier.
Also, I get very big Mad King vibes from Oshiba's father. Like, there was some kind of madness in there. I don't... Maybe it, and then I was also saying to Scarlett, like, look at all these women. You have Mariko, you have Oshiba, you have Cersei, Alicent. All these women's lives were shaped because of the decisions of men. None of the decisions were their own doing. Like, they were all set on their paths because of decisions men made for them, who they're going to marry, what they're going to do, and all this stuff. So it's very much like, I loved how she described the difference between men going to war and women going to war.
Mariko.
It's such a totally different mindset and what they're going to war for, that that's why I love the dialect in this episode. Like, call it slow, call it whatever you want, but just the conversations between people were absolutely like, I was like hooked. Like, just listening. I didn't need the action, just the story they're telling and the little subtle hues that they use in the way they use their words to describe things. Like, it's amazing.
It very much reminds me of those early seasons of Game of Thrones, like season 1 of Game of Thrones in particular, where you look back to season 1, no big battle scenes, no really big action scenes, nothing like that. You're just getting a straight up season of really good storytelling and good character development with good dialogue that is set in a just enormously rich world that you just can't get enough of. And I'm getting those vibes with Shogun so much. Season 1 of Game of Thrones in particular has always been my favorite season. It always will be my favorite season. It is the most accurate adaptation of George R. R. Martin's work. That first book is almost line for line very similar to that first season. But that is one thing I really loved about Game of Thrones in the early days. They didn't really favor big spectacle like they started to in the later seasons when the quality dropped off. It was just good storytelling with good, intriguing characters that had good dialogue, being put in normal everyday positions that regular humans can totally relate to in terms of, just, yes, they're doing it on a much grander scale. And these are highborn, people that at the end of the day, these are very everyday world human problems that a lot of them are dealing with. So, yeah, I totally don't mind the lack of all of the big spectacle action scenes, the lack of all the battle sequences. I'm sure we're going to get plenty of action in the last 4 episodes to come, especially if anyone's been seeing any of the trailers. There is some decent action coming up. So we are going to get a little bit of that. But I haven't been noticing the lack of it up until this point because, yeah, like you said, Dana, the characters and just the dialogue and the situations that these characters are put in every week, that is more than enough to keep the audience very much engaged where you're not even noticing the lack of action. Or at least I'm not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, for me, it was almost, honestly, the feeling was almost relief because we got a lot of backstory about Mariko. We got a lot of backstory about Ochiba. But when Mariko and Toranaga had this scene where she's like, a woman is simply at war, I was like, thank God we had this scene because the scene was awesome. But the sentiment behind it, that was the situation they were in. They had to deal with it.
Yeah.
They were women in this feudal system. They had to deal with it as they could. They weren't these Disney princesses bucking the system and doing weird shit. And the Star Wars, like the women make the worst men possible. I hate it in every instance. Now, we did see the Naginata scene where she was training. So I'm sure and that would be a role that women did when there was like castle defense, when they were defending their homes, they absolutely would take up a Naginata. They absolutely would fight. In
That's
those
incredibly
instances.
accurate.
Yeah, but it wouldn't be these goofy things. These women were operating in a feudal Japanese system and whispering to the men and doing like every bit of the conniving that the men were doing, but they were doing it in the framework of the society that they lived in. And I was like, thank God, it's almost a relief to see this, people like acting like people would, in a historical thing.
They're not a woman walking into a room and devouring 10 men knowing that you're not beating up those men. It's, let's be real, no matter how strong a woman is, I punch you and you punch me, it's going to be something completely different. Like, I like that the women in this are strong without having to show up the men. Like, it's real women empowerment of showing what they had to go through, living through what they had to go through, and being the conscience on these men's shoulders. Like, they're not in the forefront of like, oh well, girl power in the sense of look at me, hear me roar. They're doing it from behind the men. Like, even Kiko, like, look at her. Look at how she's manipulating Omi. Like, it's not even, she doesn't have, she uses her words and gets everything she wants.
Right. Yeah. And Ochiba up in Osaka is pretty much running the show right now, even telling what's his face what to do.
Even giving Ishido, recommendations.
Yeah, I want to know what she's got on Ishido because he's kind of sweet on her. Like,
I think he's a little sweet on her. Yeah,
I don't know. They something yet? Like, I was curious if I just didn't know the story or I was missing something, but I thought maybe they'd either hooked up or he's trying to hook up with her at some point.
But even Ochiba isn't immune to it though, because remember at the play, that old lady was like, he's kind of, he was always, he was good at everything but great at nothing kind of thing. So she was kind of undermining Ishido to Ochiba, while that was going. And then shortly thereafter, that was when, they went and got that Lord Ito to be the fifth regent.
Which will totally be a pawn that they know they can control, essentially giving Ishido and Ochiba the majority vote in the council.
Yeah. With the casual view or whatever, I thought he was just like a low status actor that they were elevating because he's a puppet, but he's actually a lord. So I think he's almost like, but he said his passion is acting. So it's almost like when you're you have a friend whose kid plays the piano and you have to sit there and watch them play or something. I think Lord Ito was like, he's like, hey, I'm going to be doing a acting thing. Everybody come and watch it. And they couldn't say no kind of thing. But it wasn't like they were
that's
going.
A good point. That's a good point.
Just her line about fate. Like I waited for fate just so I could scratch his eyes out.
Mm-hmm.
Like that is such a strong sentiment, and like like 3 words made that whole sentence like, wow, she really is like really playing chess behind the board, letting these men kind of go to war and do all this stuff, and in the end she's gonna come out on top.
Yeah, she's very calculating. I mean, we see a lot of with Toranaga's character in particular. It always seems like he's the smartest person in every room that he walks into. He doesn't have a whole lot of intellectual equals on the show, but I got to hand it to Lady Ochiba. Like the way she's playing the quote unquote game. She's masterful. Like she knows this game well. She knows how to maneuver. She knows how to manipulate better than anybody, it seems. And you can totally see how she has clawed her way up to becoming the most powerful ranked woman in Japan at the time, which she is at this point in time. Ochiba is the highest ranking female in all of Japan. So she's definitely putting her power to good use, I would say.
And she gets the name change and everything.
Yep. Got the whole name change and everything.
She's like a whole new person. Like even Mariko was saying, like the person I knew, the friend I had, she's gone the moment she changed to Shiba.
Yeah. Ochiba is not the friend that I woke up with, that I grew up with. This is a cutthroat lady now that has gone through a ton of hardship, and like Mariko says, fate and hardship kind of forged her into this person she is now. Because even Toranaga asked later on, what made Lady Ochiba into the person that she has become, and why is she warring so hard against us? Which we do end up finding later on that Ochiba totally blames Toranaga for the death of her father. But yeah, let me catch up on the chat a little bit. You guys got some awesome stuff here as well. Shows like this aren't for people who love having their hands held through the plot. Absolutely. This is all subtlety and subtext. Absolutely. And that's totally okay if that's not your kind of show or storytelling. It's totally fine. But yes, this is definitely one of those shows where the narrative isn't going to sit there and hold your hand through it. It's one of those shows that values an audience with an attentive eye, I guess you could say, for sure. And again, thank you for saying something about the monk scene in the breakdown. Yeah, we do see that very early on, where we heard in the previous episode where Mariko explains why her father took out the former ruler of Japan, stating that he was a murderous tyrant. And in this episode, we get a little bit of a glimpse of that, as he's seemingly just beheading monk after monk after monk. And so you definitely, and with even Mariko's father attempting to even stop him with, but luckily Toranaga telling him, now's not the time. So yeah, he's quite the character. And I saw Michael mentioned earlier, which is 100% true. The character that this is based on, at least the real character in real history, this is supposed to be Oda Nobunaga, which of course was the ruler before the Taiko. If you want to learn a little bit more about Oda Nobunaga and the real Tokugawa, I did do a video a few weeks back breaking down the life and history of the real Tokugawa, the character that Toranaga is based on. So if you want to learn a little bit more about the real historical figure that this character is based on, definitely check that video out when you get a chance. I had a lot of fun making that one. Definitely, Jeremy, season 1 of Game of Thrones is my favorite for the very same reasons. After season 1, I didn't like it much. Yeah, I mean, like, I really enjoyed the first 4 seasons of Game of Thrones immensely, but I always go back to season 1 always being my favorite, just because it told the best story, and it had the best characters and the best actors overall. Sean Bean, Lena Headey, Mark Addy as King Robert was freaking phenomenal in that season.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, how good is Game of Thrones season 1? And I'm definitely getting season 1 Game of Thrones vibes with Shogun up until this point, where it's not a show that, it's not relying heavily on spectacle and big battle scenes to kind of draw the crowds in. It's solely relying on good narrative, good storytelling with good acting and good dialogue. And it's working. We don't need the big action scenes. It's just great as it is.
I like it because I feel like when you get that in an early season, that to me develops the characters. You kind of care about certain characters more. So if you do have a major character death, you kind of
Yeah.
it pulls at you a little more, as opposed to when you just have these deaths and you're like, yeah, the scene itself was cool, but I didn't have as much of that emotional attachment.
Exactly. Having these earlier seasons focus, predominantly on developing these characters, world building on these characters, setting the stage, letting you know the ins and outs of some of these characters' motivations and things like that, and just focusing on having just some good dialogue and good storytelling every once in a while. And I feel like you're right, Scarlett. A lot of shows and movies these days sometimes rely a little too much on spectacle. And in my opinion, sometimes that can be a sign of the lack of writing skills, because anyone can kind of throw together a good halfway decent action scene anytime, but to actually carry a story that has very little action, that is just these good character development moments with good dialogue, good scene aesthetics. That's the kind of writing that separates the good writers from the great writers, in my opinion. So any show that can kind of pull this kind of storytelling off and not have to lean on spectacle so much, it's a sign of good writing for me.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a place for like the action movies and stuff like that where I
Absolutely.
don't care
Yeah.
about as much of the dialogue. But man, when you
Yeah.
want to get like something like this or some of these shows where they really have a world build, if you're gonna have a world building kind of show, you've got to have character building.
Yeah. hmm And these shows, this show is doing it as good as any other show that I've seen. That again, I totally aren't even recognizing the lack of action, because it's just been so compelling without it. So that's a very good point.
Yeah, and Kai actually brings up that the past Mariko was like a Disney princess. She thought she should be
Yeah.
married, looking down on Buntaro's clan or whatever.
Good point.
Never knowing that, I see, and I wouldn't have guessed it either, really. I mean, we heard that she was married off just to get her out of that situation where all the rest of her family was going to be killed. But
Yeah.
also, Toranaga kind of let spill that her father always had much greater plans for her.
Yeah.
Get her far, far away and let her come back at a later time to do that.
And we even get that one line from Toranaga where he says, "I totally understand why your father wishes you were born a man," at one point, because you see just like Mariko has all of those aspects of being a great leader. And that's just how it was back then. Fathers very much wanted sons to carry on the line. It was just a different time period. But no, you can totally see that Mariko's father definitely, had things maybe played out a little bit differently. I imagine Mariko would have had a very integral role in kind of running whatever was going on, because she's cut for it too. She's got the smarts, she's got the experience, she's tutored in that court life, she knows how to maneuver these highly dangerous political situations. She's kind of the whole package when you're looking for that kind of leader in this time period.
Yeah,
She just
and then
happens to be a
even how
female.
like Toranaga tells her, at the end of that scene, like, your war's not over. There's still
Yes.
plans for you. Don't worry.
Yeah.
But I mean, I wonder at what point. I mean, I guess it had to be when her entire family was killed. That's what changed her from the princess to the heart. I mean, it's got to harden you. I mean, her life after that point, she was uprooted.
Especially thinking that your father is just discarding you, not really knowing that he's doing it to keep you safe, thinking that he's really just discarding you. Yeah. Goodbye, Disney princess at that point.
Right. So all the easy road was gone. So I think that's why she's so smart and clever and intuitive and like perceptive of the lay of the land around her, all that stuff, all the stuff that Ochiba, blames on or like attributes to Toranaga. I mean, I think Mariko has all those qualities in spades. So.
Yeah, definitely. No, I 100% agree. She's much like Ochiba and Toranaga, they've gone through a ton of hardship, to get to where they are. And it seems like they have made sure they've held on to these life lessons to use them in future moments. And yeah, 100% agree with Kai as well here. I actually have a lot of respect for the actors who can catch for reactors, excuse me, that can catch stuff while reacting, managing cameras, etc. Because there's so much to catch here. Absolutely. I mean, even when there's no dialogue being spoken, I know we've said it time and again, but I mean, just seeing how some of these characters emote, just seeing some of the facial gestures, the facial expressions, they're doing incredible acting with no dialogue sometimes. So yeah, you got to really pay attention to a show like this to catch everything. Like you said earlier, Ravener, this definitely isn't the type of show that you can kind of just put on in the background and, you know, while you're washing the dishes or while you're doing housework or while you're working or something like that. It's not one of those shows that you can kind of just put on in the background. This is a show that, you know, commands your undivided attention. You really need to be looking at the screen the whole time, not just for the subtitles, but for all of the subcontext that we see with all these subtle face gestures and stuff like that, that if you look away for a second, you might miss something vital between two characters. So 100% agree there. And yeah, Fuji and the guns, that was enough said. Yeah, I mean, just phenomenal scene. Fuji has really turned into being one of the fan favorites, I feel, on the entire series, and for good reason. I feel like her acting has been, you know, as good as any of the other actors or actresses on the show, definitely. But yeah, past Mariko being the Disney princess, thought that she would be married better, looking down on the Toda clan and disdainfully of Hidekatsu Sama even before they got married. And yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate. I mean, it seems like her father couldn't just come out and tell her what he was doing, because obviously that would have endangered her. Her simply knowing that what he was planning would have endangered her. So yeah, you know, from her perspective, she just kind of felt like her father was casting her out to a clan on the other side of the country and discarding her, when really he was sending her away in hopes of keeping her safe, knowing that he would most likely be put to death for what he was planning. So yeah. But from her perspective, she just sees rejection. So definitely understand her, you know, definitely understand how that could have affected her upbringing.
Dude, guys in the chat, you're absolutely killing it with these questions and these things. I mean, like we all watch it a bunch of times. I've taken bullet points, and you guys are right on top of it. So it's so cool.
And this is why we love doing these. Yeah. Oh yeah. Sorry, my bad.
I'm done.
No, I totally jumped on you. My bad, man. I'm sorry. But no, I 100% agree with you, man. I like, the chat has been so freaking awesome. That's why we really enjoy getting on here and doing some of these streams. Like, I could talk about the show with Raven or Scarlett and Dana all freaking day in Discord and never get bored, but it's so fun to kind of get on here and have the chat, you know, have you guys throw your perspective in things as well, because again, I know we've said it many times in the past, but we never wanted our streams to come across as we're just talking to the audience. We want you guys to be just as involved in the conversation as we are. So loving the takes in the chat tonight. As Raven said, you guys have been killing it.
Yeah,
I love bouncing ideas off of the people in the chat, because they see something we don't, we see something,
and they're knowledgeable,
and it's awesome.
Yeah, it is. I genuinely enjoy getting on here and talking about these episodes after watching them, because you guys have been on it. And Michael brings up a good point as well. By the way, listen to the podcast. Her name means Lady in the Room of the Fallen Leaves. I've absolutely been loving the podcasts that have been coming out for every episode. For those who don't know, every time a new episode is uploaded on Hulu, if you go to YouTube on the FX channel, like FX's actual YouTube channel, they upload a corresponding podcast that goes with every episode. And usually it'll be cast, it'll be interviews with some of the cast and crew, and you get a little bit of some of the behind the scenes, what went into making the episode, what certain things mean, some of the symbolisms behind some of the episodes, which was why in last week's episode, the episode doesn't really go into detail on it, but when Buntaro fires those two arrows, that is essentially a sign of a bad omen for things to come. And they might not touch it on the actual episode of Shogun, but that's something they go very much in depth on it on the podcast for that episode. So yeah, if you guys are enjoying Shogun and you're enjoying the discussion, and you want to maybe learn a little bit more about the episodes and how they're made and stuff like that, definitely check out the podcasts that go with every episode. They really offer some good inside takes on the show. Everyone takes a second to hit. Everyone take a second to hit like and subscribe. I didn't know what you were saying there for a second. Well, thank you for that, Henry Venus. Yeah, absolutely, guys. Hit that like if you are so inclined, or dislike if you're not liking the show. That is totally cool as well. Doc Hayes used to love the video game, the Nintendo game Nobunaga's Ambition, a classic historical turn-based strategy. Interesting. I don't think I've ever heard of that game myself.
God, yeah. Well, I was geeking out in the chat with a couple of guys in there. Yeah, I played it when I was youth, when I was a youth. Yeah, on the Nintendo system too, man. And we did, you'd grow, you'd try to grow grain and keep your supplies and go to battles and stuff, man. And I was telling them there's an updated version, probably one with like plussed up graphics on Steam now, but it's like $44 or something, even on sale. Okay. So it's new and it's improved. I wonder if it's as good. I never buy anything when it first comes out. I'm always like 2-3 years late on that kind of stuff. But I'll let you guys know, man. Yeah, it's in there. There's a couple good points, and I'm missing. There's a couple people that said some really cool. Somebody prefaced their thing with Wild Theory, and it scrolled past it, and I didn't jot it down. If you said Wild Theory, please repeat your question because it was good. I wanted to touch on it.
Yeah,
and the other one,
absolutely.
And another quick one while we get back on track, it was that pre-scene in the trailer about, we need to get Toranaga on our side or whatever. Was that not the biggest red herring plot point ever? Because once in episode 6, they just said, no, we're not going to do that. That was like, but in the trailer for episode 6, they're like, we must bring
Toranaga to our side. Yeah.
They're like, yeah, like you turkeys, and they only give us friggin' 20 seconds. It'll be a 40-second long trailer, and like the last 17 seconds of it will be nothing. And it's like, you mother.
Yeah, they don't give us a lot when it comes to the trailers for the upcoming episode. They give us it's like 20 seconds of actual scenes and then all credits for the rest of it. Yeah. Leo Fee says, these characters, if they had died, I got no emotional attachment to. Toranaga's son, Omi, Ochiba, Buntaro, Blackthorn, Mariko. I'll cry if Hiromatsu dies. Yeah, I love Hiromatsu. And seeing Hiromatsu just absolutely cut his way out of Osaka in this episode, which we do see earlier, that there was a little bit of an attack on Toranaga's section of the castle in Osaka, where he used to keep his birds. We see his birds are getting burnt down and everything. Bye-bye pigeons.
Yeah.
Freaking Hiromatsu absolutely cuts his way out of the city, which was a really cool scene to see. He just cut his way right out of there. But here we see that, and again, this is definitely another example of Lady Ochiba's influence on the council, and even the priest kind of remarks on it, where the campaign against Toranaga has definitely been accelerated since Ochiba has arrived in Osaka. And here I think we're seeing another example of just how much influence Ochiba has, where before she showed up, none of these moves, they weren't crossing. There were certain lines they just weren't crossing. We see it here with the attack on Toranaga's place, and then we see it even later with the attack on the region that they end up killing, which Lady Ochiba was totally behind. So yeah, we're seeing, just exactly how much influence Ochiba has now that she is here in Osaka. But yeah, seeing Hiromatsu just cut his way out like that, great freaking scene. Love this dude.
Oh man, that tension in the council room though, when dude was like, man, you going too far. I'm not into this, and I'm leaving. He just like walked out. It was almost like, ooh, I thought somebody was about to commit I'm call it Sudoku.
Yeah, someone was about to commit Sudoku. Indeed. And yeah, we see, for the first time, the council is now full, where they have their 5th member, their replacement, the stooge that Ochiba recommended to Ishido that they can easily control. But yeah, as you guys point out, we see, Sugiyama. Sugiyama Joshi, I believe his name is, if my memory serves. He's starting to notice the shadiness that is going on here within the councils and within the regions, and he feels like he might be the last one that is actually truly serving the realm. So he refuses to confirm the 5th member of the council. So technically, the council really never was at a 5 full member strength. And then we see later on, it looks like they're going to have to find even another new member of the council, as poor old Sugiyama has met his end. And I love that
Right.
line. He's like, "I was wrong to side with a bureaucrat," because
Right.
for anyone who doesn't know, this character here, this regent, his family actually comes from a very long and noble line of some of the richest samurai warriors in Japan. So he very much comes from a badass samurai line. This guy, he's definitely not as much of a bureaucrat as Ishido is. So I love that line of him saying, I was wrong to side with a bureaucrat. Good scene.
Right. And this is the second time that because I mean they emphasized that was the second time that mention kind of appeared because it was the old lady talking to Ochiba about Ishido, that
Yeah,
like mediocre, he's good at a lot of things but great at nothing, whatever. And then
yeah,
this second time now but this is the first time somebody like said it to his face kind of. But
yeah.
people, that's it kind of like reinforced that's the assessment that everybody has of him probably, even
Hmm.
if they're not telling him, they're like, we know what you are, you're not of us,
Yeah,
you're not of our class kind of thing.
yeah.
And they made a big point about people that even Ochiba in the after the play talked about some people are like born to greatness and some people have to claim it or something.
Yeah. Yep.
um I love how they kind of like revisit these themes, but I don't feel it's too heavy-handed. I mean, I
Not
think
at all.
they repeat a theme or they reference a theme, but they don't like really they don't insult us kind of. At least I
Yeah.
didn't pick up on that.
No,
So yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
awesome.
Well, and
I
Rooftop Korean also brings up another really interesting point where we do see that scene earlier in an earlier episode with Ashido, and he's just sitting there stamping paper after paper after paper, and we even hear Ashido say to the rest of the council where he woke up this morning and he saw himself probably as Toranaga sees us, nothing more than bureaucrats. And yeah, he kind of peers over and looks over at the armor, almost kind of knowing that's not who he is. He's not cut from that cloth. He's a bureaucrat at the end of the day.
That's a good catch, man. I love it. Yeah, and that's so true. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Super, super cool, man. I love it when you guys bring stuff up like that. I do want to bring up
Oh, here's the
uh
wild theory from Kai that you
yeah.
mentioned, Ravener. If you want to take this one, go ahead.
Yeah, he said, wild theory. Ochiba wants Ishido dead, manipulating him to act quickly and brutally to turn the entire council against him, and maybe leave Osaka Castle to crush Toranaga, like in the Battle of Sekigahara. That is
Ooh.
yeah, I mean, because we're finding these guys, but mostly it's the young guys that are impetuous and tempestuous and impulsive
Hmm.
and quick acting. But yeah, she might. See, I always took it at face value. I thought she just wanted Toranaga dead, and the sooner the better. But
Yeah, she might want him out of the way too, though. That's a good
yeah,
point.
yeah, and she, I
Very good
mean,
point.
she has to be very aware of her almost like puppet like control of Ishido.
Yeah.
She really knows that he's her point man, but I think shoehorning Ito into the council when the whole other, like every other submission to the council got rejected by one or another of the counselors.
Hmm.
I think by getting Ito in there, that kind of reinforced to Ochiba that what power she had, and they were telling her
Yeah.
and even Ishido said what a great suggestion of Lord
Yeah.
Ito. So
Yeah.
I mean, you very well may be onto something. I wonder if I mean, they'll almost have to flat out say that though at some point in narrative in the story if that's the case, because right now I'm just taking it as she's got this blood grudge against Toranaga and wants it to happen ASAP. But
Hmm.
but I would love to see it if she actually did kind of like backstab or something to Ishido at some point. That'd prove you 100% right. And I'm not a book
Yeah.
reader, so I don't know. I mean, the book readers might be like, this guy's a idiot, it's already happened. I don't know this, man. I'm taking this like episode by episode. I'm not even looking on Reddit. I'm not like, I'll look on Reddit for explanations of certain terms, because they've added like every week they add a thing that you can learn. So I learned about the money system. Last week I learned about that curse god thing. The week before, it's always something different. Did they do this? Can they do this? I learned about the tried to learn if they actually let pheasants rot with the guts inside, which I don't think they did. But every week there's something to learn. But I don't. And Jeremy knows I am the anti-spoiler guy. I can't stand it. I'll drop off a stream if I'm on the panel if there's spoilers.
Kai also has a really good question here, and this is something I have definitely been wondering myself as well. And I know a little bit of the answer already, having read some of the book. But this was I was noticing this right away as well, even before I got to that point in the book. Hundreds of women, only she produces the heir. The heir is the heir Toranaga's son, yes or no? And Michael Lockhart says no, but he might know who it is. And that's kind of where I'm at as well. It doesn't seem, obviously, it seems anyway, that the Taiko seemingly was barren. Hence, them putting all of his courtesans through all of these kind of tests and giving them all of these tinctures and potions to hopefully make them more fertile so they can eventually carry an heir. But it seems like, if you're trying with 100 different women, it's not the women at that point. It is you, unfortunately. So it seems like the Taiko was maybe barren. So if that is the case, who exactly is the father of the heir? Who did Ochiba really hook up with, for lack of a better term? Who is the real father of the heir? Because I get the feeling it is not the Taiko.
He had no children, not even daughters?
None.
Okay. I just didn't know if it was he just didn't have a son, or if any of those courtesans produced daughters. And so then he probably was barren. And that is a good question. But if he produced only daughters and did have some children, then there might be a possibility that he is the kid's father.
Yeah. But as far as I know, he's produced no children, no heirs of any kind, and he's tried with hundreds of different women. And after a while, you start to just think, okay, it seems like that maybe it's him that is shooting blanks.
Yeah, and we saw that in Genghis Khan or Marco Polo, where it was they couldn't get a male heir, and it turns out to be the stable boy. Because she needed to have an heir. She needed to have an heir in their belly right away. And it wasn't happening. I think the guys were even traveling or whatever. It was like physically impossible for her to have had it happen. And the stable boy, and then the next day, the stable boy is found face down in the river or something. So, nobody knows. Nobody knows. It's before the DNA test, before Maury.
Yeah, before Maury Povich shows up. Yeah, that's a good point. Also, I have not read the books or watched the 85 miniseries, but loosely aware of the Battle of Sangahara and what happened there. Yeah, absolutely. Everything that we're dealing with here, it all kind of culminates in this one big decisive battle. And I'm not sure if they're even going to show that battle on the show itself, or how much of that battle they're going to actually film and show on the show. But this is ultimately all heading to a big battle that is going to be kind of the deciding factor and of who's going to win this conflict, basically.
Question. If I remember correctly, there was a scene back in one of the earlier episodes where Toranaga was sitting down with Fuji's grandfather. His name is escaping me right now. His right hand that cut his way out of Osaka. Didn't he make a comment to Toranaga that he could have married Oshiba?
Yes. The Taiko
said, "I don't go for beautiful women."
Yes, that was the Taiko, and when the Taiko and Toranaga are speaking together in episode 2, I believe it is. Yeah, the Taiko kind of mentions, he says, that could have been you that married her, and we hear Toranaga say, "I don't favor beautiful women." Toranaga
put in the chat that Toranaga could be the kid's father, and that just made that scene pop in my head of him making that quick comment about how he could have married her.
Yeah.
And Ilona Dracula said that's how she forced Destiny to look at her. And
very good point. That's what she says there. That's a very good point. That's a very. She does say that line. That's how I forced Destiny to look at me, and that's a good way of forcing destiny to look at you. If you can't provide an heir from the Tycho, let me go find somebody else's seed that's a little more fertile, maybe. So yeah, good point, guys. Very good point.
Love it, love it, love it.
There's just so much stuff, that the show is throwing at us, and I've been just really enjoying every minute of it. I love the backstory that we got in particular in this episode, where we learn a ton about Ochiba's past and Mariko's past in particular. We finally find out exactly why Ochiba, or at least part of the reason as to why Ochiba harbors so much hatred for Toranaga, where even though it was Mariko's father who dealt the killing blow to to Ochiba's father, it was very much Toranaga that she believes planned the entire thing, with him whispering in the ears of everybody, which very much could have been the case, as far as we know.
Or is she mad at Toranaga because he is the real father of her
Because he's a
child?
real dad. Yes, that'd be interesting.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's a secret. The best way to keep a secret is if one of between
Yep.
two people is if one of them's dead. Now it's a
It's
little
one of
late
them's
in the
dead, yeah.
game, but you would have thought it would be sooner. But yeah, I mean, at least she could guarantee. If he hasn't told anybody yet, he can guarantee
Secret
that
would
she
die
isn't
with
going to tell
him.
anybody. Yep.
Yeah, yep. Really good stuff, man. This is really good stuff. And yeah, Ochiba gave him that look in episode 2, as Gray says as well. Yeah, we saw that little subtle look between Ochiba and Toranaga in that episode, where just that one look between those two kind of at least gave me the impression as the audience member that there was some really sordid history there between Ochiba and Toranaga, just from that one little glance they give to each other in that early episode. So yeah, it's a very good point.
And just like Gray's saying, the
Yep,
same thing.
yep.
Like Toranaga wants to protect that he doesn't want to be a shogun. But he doesn't have to be a shogun if it's his son is the heir. If he can be the sole regent, it's the same thing, and that would be because we were just thinking, well, Toranaga's an honorable man. He's loyal to the Taikyo's son, to the regent, to the heir. Well, if it turns out that man, you guys may have figured it out.
Crap, there's something there. I like it. I like it.
Seeing all that experience from digging and doing stuff.
Yeah, it comes in handy.
You can dissect anything once you put your tinfoil hat on.
For real, and that's why we never shy away from throwing our tinfoil hats on and diving into that rabbit hole every once in a while. Have fun with some of these things. That's what we say. And it's served us well in the past. And I got to say, the chat has been absolutely freaking killing it tonight. You guys have been coming up with some great theories and ideas and connections that even we have been missing as well. So yeah, you guys are freaking great.
Yep.
Great
Where's
stuff.
Maury when you need him? You are the father. Where's Maury when you need him to come out with that DNA test?
Yeah.
We got the proof right here.
That's all we need is Maury showing up in the next episode with a freaking vanilla envelope in his hand. We got the results. Richland Ford asks, I've been holding off on listening to the audiobook. Should I do it? Well, that is 100% up to you, my friend. I'm at the point now where I'm listening to the audiobook myself, and I'm trying not to listen too far ahead of where the show is. I don't really want to spoil too much of it. I know I have the general sense. I mean, some stuff has been spoiled from me, and I did watch the old Shogun years and years and years and years and years ago. I don't remember much of it, but I do remember how a few of our main characters' stories end. And of course, I'm much more familiar with the real history behind these characters, the real history of the real Tokugawa, the real Hideyoshi, the real Oda Nobunaga. I'm much more familiar with their stories than I am with Shogun, so I know where a lot of these characters are heading. I know where a lot of the story is going to end, but I'm not trying to read too much ahead because I just want to be surprised. So many shows that we cover here on the channel are shows that we know just about everything about the source material about, whether it's in a Song of Ice and Fire show or something else based on a book. So every once in a while, it's nice to just be surprised for a change and not really know what's coming next. So know what's coming next. So for that reason, I'm not reading too far ahead. I'm trying to only read as far as the show has gone up until this point. But that's really up to you. I mean, if you guys don't mind spoilers, if spoilers don't really matter too much to you, then I would say, yeah, go ahead and listen to the audiobook. If you don't want to be spoiled, I would say continue watching the show and then read the audiobook. But that's just my advice. You guys, it's up to you guys. I guess it all matters of how much do you value spoilers or not, or how much do you not mind spoilers.
Yeah, just that
Um,
line though that she does give about Toranaga and how she knows his real heart, because they always talk about hiding, your heart from everybody. She knows, so y'all are onto something. She knows a little bit more than we know.
yeah, yeah, it's and scornful baby mama all the way to Japan, says Prince Ward.
Oh yeah.
Indeed, my friend. And another wild theory from our friend Kai. Maybe Ochiba does hate Toranaga over lover he ignored. Yeah, I mean, who knows? I mean, we did get that one throwaway line of them saying that Toranaga could have married her apparently at some point. So yeah, who knows? Maybe Ochiba, at one point harbored feelings towards Toranaga and was a little upset that she got spurned. These are great theories, guys. These are really great theories. Loving it.
Great.
Absolutely.
We went
loving it.
almost the whole stream until now. We went almost the whole stream until he had to bring it up.
It was so good though,
crazy
dude. I'm
man.
sorry. Oh, it was a good burn.
Uh-oh.
I'm trying to
Uh-oh.
be nice. You see him poking at me. You see him poking. You guys see
Oh,
it.
oh,
You guys
oh,
all
I know.
see
I
it.
see what you're saying now. Crazy Matt has showed up. I see what you're saying. Toranaga
But
is keeping his
I
friends.
got my team homemade in the chat. They've already made it
Hell
known.
yes.
I've already got my team in the chat.
Indeed. Team homemade all the way. Thundergator says Toranaga is keeping his friends close, but his enemies closer, as the Crimson Sky battle tactic is a red herring meant for a spy, Buncharo and or Yabushigi, to report the fake battle plans to Ashido. Now that is a very interesting turn of events if that is the case. And yeah, I guess we can talk a little bit about the whole Crimson Sky thing. I think that's one of the only things we haven't really touched on a whole lot yet during the stream. But yes, we hear Hiromatsu comes back from after barely making it out of Osaka alive, where he suggests to Toranaga that it might be time to enact Crimson Sky. And we find out later, and we find out in this scene that Crimson Sky is essentially an offensive. It's time to stop playing defense, time to go on the offensive, where Crimson Sky will basically be Toranaga and his warriors storming the city of Osaka, killing all of the leadership and power, and installing Toranaga as the sole regent, which would essentially make him the new shogun. And of course, Toranaga is a little bit against this at first. We hear him say time and time again that he's never sought to be shogun. It's not a title he wants. He even regards the title of shogun itself to be a product of a bygone age. In earlier episodes. So being shogun, being the sole ruler of Japan, is never something Toranaga has ever really wanted. We even see the Taiko on his deathbed offer Toranaga that very same position, where Toranaga turns it down because he knows the ramifications it would have bolstering his enemies against him. So this is not a title that Toranaga has ever really wanted. But by the time we get to this, by the time we get to the end of this episode, and Toranaga finds out exactly what is going on in Osaka with Ochiba and Ashido, and them killing one of the regents and blaming it on bandits, Toranaga feels at this point where his hand is kind of being forced. So he reluctantly does agree to enact the Crimson Sky plan, which up until this point we're led to believe is a plan for them storm the city, kill everybody in power, and install Toranaga as the next ruler. What do you guys think about this? Do you think we will see this Crimson Sky plan enacted?
No.
I don't know. It seemed like he was ready to go
Or
at
if
the
it does,
end.
do you think?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, I agreed with them initially, though, and I can't remember if it was his son or somebody said that, or Omi that said that they don't have enough people, even with the half brother joining with his half brother's troops.
Yes.
These guys
Yep.
know. I mean, these guys know warfare. These guys know siege warfare, and even just the basic rule of thumb was when you're going to do a siege, a castle assault, you need a 3-to-1. You need a
3
3-time
times the men.
advantage.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Or the reverse of it is that the castle itself is a 3 times multiplier to whoever you have garrisoning the building or the fort or castle. So yeah, just to stand a reasonable chance, you have to have 3-1, and then play it from there. So I don't think so. But I mean, I was kind of surprised the whole setting everything on fire scene. So that wasn't the castle, I guess, being set on fire. What was being set on fire? Just the different districts.
The where we saw where Hiromatsu was.
Yeah, where the bird.
It looked like it was the same building that Toranaga was in with Yabushige in episode 1 or 2, where Toranaga was talking with Yabushige, where he keeps his pigeons. I do believe that is in Osaka.
Okay.
I think it's just a different part of Osaka Castle.
I don't think that Toranaga wants to do it, but the way he made it seem like through the episode was like, no, we're not going to do this. But then whatever happened with them holding people hostage and sort of taking out that region, he's almost like, all right, if we don't do anything, basically we're dead. So it's almost like we're going to have to do something. So I don't know if they're going to enact the Crimson Sky like the exact plan, but it almost seems like somebody's going in undercover just to take out enough people. I don't know if that's going to be some of the ladies are going to get to do some spy action or what. But it seemed like somebody's getting sent in, but I don't know.
Well, I mean, there's going to be some stuff going down. I mean, based on some of the other footage that we've seen, there is some fighting that is going to be had inside Osaka Castle with Mariko in particular, if any of the trailers are accurate. But as far as this whole Crimson Sky plan being enacted the way that they're planning it, who knows? And if they do enact it, will it even be successful? Because if real history is any guide, I shouldn't spoil anything, but if real history is any guide, there's different events that lead to the ending of this conflict between Toranaga and his enemies. So it's going to be fun to see what exactly they do with this whole Crimson Sky thing. Are they going to really enact the plan? Because if we see the trailer for episode 7, there's that
he sees his brother, right?
What's that?
I say in the trailer he sees his brother, right?
Yeah, he goes to see his brother to get some more reinforcements. So he is meeting up with more forces. But we also see in the trailer for next week's episode, we see a scene of Toranaga, his son Hiromatsu, and Buntaro all in the woods with Toranaga's son, asking him, so what have you decided? Are we going to die with blood on our swords? Indicating that even up until that point, Toranaga hasn't really fully maybe committed to Crimson Sky yet. But yeah, I guess we're going to see how this all plays out. I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Yeah, and the chat is 100% corrected me. It is like Toranaga's villa, part of the castle, Toranaga's quarters in the castle. I was like, I'm thinking that if you have everything made out of paper and wood, man, that is, even if you don't like somebody setting it on fire, man. I told you my story. I set my backyard on fire, man. It's risky business, man. The wind changes, and things get out of hand in a hurry. So that's crazy. And that's also the birds also burn to prevent messengers from getting out. Another good point.
Yeah, good point. Good point. We know how much Toranaga relies on his carrier pigeons in order to, communicate messages from afar. We see that he's got, the spy in Ujiro, which we find out is not just some lowly peasant fisherman. This is actually a prized samurai from Toranaga's army that is undercover in Yabushige's village. And I imagine that is far from Toranaga's only spy. I'm sure he's got more spies out there. So yeah, taking out the birds like that is essentially leaving Toranaga, kind of cut off at the knees. I'm sure he still has access to some of his other pigeons because it seems like he has them stashed in multiple locations. But taking out at least from that point, no messages can leave Osaka warning Toranaga of anything that's happening within the city.
Right down in that crevice of that canyon or whatever is Miraji, the guy who was the long time. And that's another thing, man. That dude's living decades as a kind of a spy. I know, sure, he's the head man of a village, but that's not like the prestige of a long time trusted samurai kind of thing. So that is
absolutely
serving.
Absolutely. Especially of his age. He seems to be a little bit older in years. I imagine he has probably served Toranaga for decades up until that point. So yeah, I imagine that's not exactly the 401k and retirement plan he was hoping for in his later years.
Does he even carry swords?
No, he doesn't even carry a sword because he's portraying himself as just a simple fisherman. He doesn't even have a sword on him.
Right. And yeah, and the other thing is samurai. This is another little tidbit I learned. To separate, like, because I was reading about foreign samurai, and there's different stories here and there, but the way you can really tell is if they have two names. You will have two names if you're a samurai. You'll get your swords because they've allowed other guys with like single names to have two swords, but they're not exactly samurai. So that's one good indicator. And then there was a French guy in like the 1800s that they called as a samurai. So it's kind of neat. But yeah, Miraji is just Miraji. Isn't
good old Miraji. I love that guy. That guy's awesome.
Just like Yujiro the gardener. It's like, no, not Yujiro Sama. Remember when he got corrected?
Yeah, no, not Ujiro Sama. I'm just Ujiro, just the gardener.
we don't talk.
We don't do that. It's improper. But yeah, it's just, again, I cannot speak highly enough for the performances that we've been getting up until this point. The acting's been great. The dialogue has been phenomenal. The aesthetics of the episodes, everything has been top-notch production quality up until this point. So I can't speak highly enough for Shogun. I mean, anybody out there who isn't watching it, I would definitely recommend getting into this show. We have been waiting with bated breath for our, some of our favorite shows to come back around, like House of the Dragon and From in particular. And this came around really at the perfect time where we didn't really have any big main shows that we were covering here on the channel at the time. We were kind of just waiting for House of the Dragon to come back around and then From afterwards. But yeah, this show came around at the perfect time. It's been so fun diving into it with all of you guys in the chat in particular. You guys have been coming up with so many awesome theories and observations about these episodes. And I genuinely look forward to these streams every Wednesday where we can kind of dive into these episodes because you guys are always noticing stuff that even we miss. And that's what makes these things so fun. We have a very observant chat. You guys have been killing it so far.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Three more episodes to go. Spread the word far and wide, guys. Because this is FX, man. FX used to be like a joke. It used to be like
they did have Sons of Anarchy, which was pretty good. But they never had anything this good. You're right about that.
Yeah, this is really kind of an event. I'm really enjoying it, and I'm really enjoying it. Sharing it with you guys on the panel, and also you guys in the chat. You're making my week. And they've already got an episode 7 trailer out, but their trailer for this thing is not worth freaking nothing, man. But I know we're going to have a battle. We have to have a good open field battle, right? At some point in this. I know historically in this time in history, there was at least one beautiful set piece.
Yeah.
Awesome. And we're going to see that. And I can't wait to see, Mariko with her Naginata. And at this time, the Naginata was kind of like women would use it, or it wasn't. It had its heyday, and then basically economics changed it over to the yari, which is the spear. Because if you got to make 20,000 of something, you'll make 20,000. It's got to be
more affordable, and exactly. It got to be a little bit more easier and affordable to make if you're mass producing these things. That makes sense. That definitely makes sense.
Yeah, and the Naginata is I would call it more like a machete than a sword on a stick. But even then, I mean, if it breaks. If the handle break, a spear is the same thing. If the spear blade breaks, you replace the blade. If the handle breaks, you got a shorter spear. If that breaks, then you just get a different handle. And they could use bamboo, or hardwoods if they wanted. As the shaft and that. So, but there's my little history. I know I automatically go into that mode.
No, I love it, man. I love it. No, I love the when we get the added context to some of these historical facts, man. Hell no, never apologize for that. I love those anecdotes.
But I'm super excited to see them in action and how they portray it. Because I mean, she was no slouch, man. Mariko was no slouch, and she had that little smug smile when she beat her opponent. So yeah, man.
She was no slouch there. She's and I love that they're showing us that she has had extensive training with the weapon in question. Because so many times where we see someone just kind of pop in, we have no indication that they have had any kind of training or anything like that, and they just destroy a room full of men. So it's been the action that we have seen up until this point has been very realistic, and I look forward to seeing Mariko and the rest of Toranaga's company start putting in some work, because as we see, there is some work that is going to be going down. I mean, this is the scene that I cannot wait to see in particular. But that's for another episode. But Gray asks, can someone explain why Mariko's family was hunted for killing a ruthless, corrupted ruler? Now, unfortunately, yes, the ruler was corrupted and a murderous ruler, but unfortunately, at the end of the day, he was still the current shogun at the time, or at least the character the real person that character is based on, Oda Nobunaga, was the last shogun of Japan. The Taiko, Hideyoshi, he wasn't exactly a shogun. He was just the ruler of Japan, but he didn't have the shogun title. Oda Nobunaga was a shogun, though. He was the ruler of Japan, and even though, yes, he was corrupt and, murderous, at the end of the day, it's still like assassinating the president at the end of the day. So unfortunately, Mariko's whole family ended up getting put to death because of that. As ruthless as the ruler that they were killing was, they still have laws in place that they have to abide, unfortunately. Unfortunately. And yes, the episode 7 trailer is out. I did already upload my episode 7 trailer breakdown, so if you guys do want to check out the trailer for next week's episode and some of my thoughts as to where episode 7 could be heading, definitely check out our episode 7 trailer breakdown that is in the chat. But again, I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. I always look forward to these discussions. You guys really come with some of the best theories and some of the best observations on this show. I genuinely look forward to hanging out with everybody every week and diving into these episodes. And we will definitely continue to do so, as we still have 4 awesome episodes to look forward to. We got episode 7 next week that we are going to be diving into, which is looks like it's going to be a pretty fun one. Looks like some of the action is indeed going to be coming around. So if you are one of the audience members that has wanted a little bit more action, it looks like that is indeed coming up over the next few episodes. But again, I just want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. I want to thank my awesome co-hosts and panelists for joining us as well. I always look forward to hanging out with you guys and diving into these things. And can't say enough about the chat. You guys absolutely killed it tonight with all of the thoughts, theories, and the observations. You guys have been absolutely great. Can't thank you guys enough. And thank you, of course, for spending some time out of your busy week to come and hang out with us. I know during the week is tough, especially for a lot of us that have day jobs. Wednesday is one of the worst days of the week for me personally. But I really do appreciate everybody taking your time out to come and hang out with us for a little bit and talk a little bit of Shogun, because we very much appreciate it. But yes, ratings, as Star points out, that's right. We cannot end without giving our ratings. Ratings for episode 6. Let's see. Where would I rate this episode? This was such a good episode where we got some really good backstory, some really good character development, great dialogue. I got to give this episode an 8.5 out of 10 for me personally. And definitely let us know in the chat as well. How would you guys rate tonight's episode 6 out of 10? 1 being horrible, 10 being great. How would you guys rate this episode? Ravener, what's your rating?
I'll go with yours, 8.5 out of 10. I thought it was talky the first couple times, and I had trouble bearing down on it because I am a little ADD myself. I'll get up and wander when I mess around on my phone. But man, when I settled down and gave it its due time, absolutely worth it, man. Beautiful. I thought we were going to get a little more action. I thought we were heading into actual war, but they did. I mean, they're really. A lot of it was moving pieces into place, and this one, I mean, there's not too much more moving into pieces into place that can be done before shit hits the fan. So yeah, man, I'll say 8.5. Happy with a lot of the subtext, a lot of the unspoken acting and that kind of stuff. When Mariko's leaving, when Kiku is taking Blackthorn to the private thing and she's leaving, and that was in the trailer, that little hand brush or whatever, she didn't reciprocate, but she didn't flinch. So
she didn't pull away either. Yeah, that's a good point. That is a good point.
Man. Love
No,
it.
I'm freaking loving it too. What about you, Scarlett? Where would you rate this episode out of 10?
Oh man, I'm somewhere between 8.5 and a 9.
Oh, okay.
Because I want to give it a 9, but yeah, it is very much so, like Raymond said, you have to really sit down to give it that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's somewhere in between there.
Okay. All right. So we got 2 8.5s and an 8.5/9. Love it. What about you, Dana? Where would you put this one out of 10?
I'm definitely at an 8.5 for this episode. It wasn't my favorite, but it still was up there for me just because the story was just great, and I loved the little bits of interactions we got with everybody. And so I'm definitely at an 8.5.
Nice. Love it. So we're getting some good ratings all across the board. I think between everybody in the chat, between everybody giving their ratings every week and us giving our ratings every week, I don't think any of us have rated any of these episodes lower than like a 7. I think 7 is the lowest rating that I've given to any of these episodes. All of them have been 7s or higher. So that's awesome. It seems like everybody is enjoying it. Henry Bemis gives this one a solid 9.2 out of 10. Hell yes, my friend. Great rating. Leo V gives it an 8 out of 10. Love it. We got to see a lot of 8s in the chat like that. Michael also gives it an 8 as well. We got an 8.5 out of 10 from Star. We got another 8 from Gray as well. Another 8 from Richland. A 9 from Doc Hayes. And we got a special 8 pineapples out of 10 pizzas from Awesome One. Now, even though pineapple is not allowed to go on pizza, I will allow it just this once.
Agreed.
Just this once. And Doc Hayes also says, for me, every episode has been about an 8.5 to 10. They really have all been so good. Like I struggle to think of a single episode that I genuinely just didn't enjoy. I've genuinely enjoyed every episode that they've aired so far. But yeah, great ratings, guys. I always love to see what you guys think about these things as well. And it's just so fun to see this show come to life. I mean, and seeing the clashing of the cultures in particular has been so fascinating. Seeing Blackthorn just being, thrust headfirst into this foreign world and trying to have to learn as he goes. He's very much been thrown into the deep end, as it were. And he's very much learning as he goes here. And the cultural clash that is on display on a lot of these episodes has been so fun to see. And yeah, it is definitely showing one of the most accurate versions of feudal Japan, sharing that culture with the rest of the world in a way that we really haven't seen in many other shows and movies before. So I just can't speak highly enough about the show, the production, the cast, the crew, everything that went into making this thing has been so phenomenal. And more importantly, I cannot thank the chat the most. You guys have been so awesome hanging out with us every week, giving us your thoughts, your time, your ideas. And again, we will continue to go live every week and talk about the newest episodes that come out. So definitely come and hang out with us again next week for our next after show. And again, can't thank you guys enough for hanging out with us on this fine Wednesday evening.
Link the Discord so people can also come find us in the Discord.
Yes, indeed. Anyone who is, if you guys are on Discord as well, we do have a Discord. The link to it is in the description of this stream. So anyone who wants to come and hang out and join our Discord, we're always doing something in there. We're always planning watch parties and stuff like that. So definitely come and hang out with us in the Discord as well. There's always a very fun time to have. And again, big thank you to each and every one of you for hanging out with us this week. You guys are the absolute best. I see Team Homemade is representing in the chat. That is what I like to see. Team Homemade all the way. But again, big thank you to everybody out there for joining us. Again, we will be live next Wednesday talking all things Episode 7 after Episode 7 drops, and I cannot wait to see where this thing goes from here. So until next time, everybody, stay safe out there, and we will see you on the next one.
Death is in our air. In sea. In earth. It can come for us at any moment. To show your true heart is to risk your life. Enemies are everywhere and friends nowhere. Life and death are the same. Both can have value and purpose. Remember, we live and we die. We control nothing beyond that.